Yeah, and that's why you should never do that again. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Maxon booth here at SIGGRAPH 2024, Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Matthias, a.k.a. Major VFX on all the socials, and I'm accompanied by some of the world's leading artists showcasing how they use Maxon 1 in their workflow to create some of the most beautiful, stunning imagery you'll see on any screen. To my left, a longtime presenter, amazing member of the community who creates some of the most captivating imagery when it comes to all things food. So if you guys haven't had lunch yet, I'm sorry, you're about to get really hungry. Let's give a big, warm Maxon welcome to Patrick 4D.
Appreciate that, guys. What's going on? My name is Patrick Foley, or Patrick 4D, as you might know me on social media. I'm a 3D artist or a digital chef from Atlanta, Georgia. And my work primarily goes in the food and product space, and the photorealistic side. And so I've been doing this thing, which actually started on Instagram, was making all these different types of renders. I can show you, this is kind of where I base my stuff out of in Atlanta. Most of you guys from social media are used to this view from the beginning shots. But my career actually began in the film world. So I was a director of photography. I went to school at SCAD Atlanta for film. And so these are just some stills from different music videos, some different productions. So I was already familiar with camera, lighting, setting up the scene, composition, all these things before I got to the 3D world. Which is kind of why when I didn't know how to model anything or really sculpt or anything, my work started looking like this. So I had this lighting, composition, and kind of photorealism to my work, but I didn't know how to sculpt or do anything else. So they look kind of cool, and this was actually the work I was mostly attracted to at the beginning. I thought all I wanted to do was make stuff that didn't look possible, but it was photorealistic and it looked abstract and trippy, and so that's kind of how that started. Soon I began looking at kind of hard surface modeling stuff in Cinema 4D. This control was made 100% with the volume mesher and modeler in Cinema 4D when those tools came out. So I started learning a little bit of modeling, starting from Boolean, adding shapes together, and then we quickly progressed to a crazy different side of this stuff. Once I realized I've kind of plateaued, I was like, okay, I got to learn how to sculpt to some degree. So that's when Zbrush was beginning to take an effect. I opened that up. I originally quit after a few months, took a 6-month break because I was kind of discouraged, and immediately came back and started very small. I think a lot of the people that open up Zbrush for the first time try to make stuff that are at the top level, focus on the wrinkles, everything, and they're kind of getting overwhelmed. So I started really simple. I was doing Powerpuff Girls, very simple shapes. And eventually, I guess we got here. I don't know what was going on here. This was the Bosch series. It was kind of where are these cartoon characters that we grew up with? Where are they now? And this is kind of what they're looking like. They're not doing too well. And we went far with this series. We we destroyed Meg Griffin over here. Unfortunately, we got Eric Cartman. That's what he looks like now, and Jimmy Neutron. It was just I had a obsession with trying to make these photorealistic skin textures, and let's see, they need to hit a dermatologist or something. We got wild with it. So from this series, once I had a lot of fun making these characters, and people on social media had a like into these, I was like, okay, well, what if we made some of the cartoon foods that we saw come to life? So that's where we get the Homer Simpson donut. I was testing around with the Patty Wagon from SpongeBob. We had Purple Flurp here from Jimmy Neutron. And again, it was just I always wanted to try Krabby Patties or these things that we grew up watching. What would that look like inspired in real life? And because of this, I was like, okay, I feel like this stuff looks tasty. What if we just kept it going? And we just started making real food. So I had fun with just combining different foods together. You got the McDonald's fries here. We got some peanut M&Ms. This one on the right, I was like, what if we mixed a Tootsie Pop with sour Skittles? What would that look like? I continued on this wave of food. We got some ramen. We got a Philly cheesesteak over there. Actually, no, it's an Italian beef, I think, from Chicago. And then we got some Kit Kat. And again, this thing that used to be this series became my whole niche. So at this point, I've only been doing food for 3 whole years, pretty much nothing else. And it's led to cool series within the food world. What if Louis Vuitton came out with cookies? Or what if Michael Kors collabed with M&Ms or Chanel? What if they made cookies or something like that? And it really let me explore deeper with the lighting, and the textures within all these foods. And a lot of it had to do with Zbrush. I was making all these things from scratch. And yeah, to this day, I've not used any kind of like photo scan type things in my workflow. It's all just been making the stuff from scratch in Zbrush. Here's some like Panda Express stuff. Again, all in Zbrush. We have some realistic tacos. We got some like Buffalo Wild Wings stuff going on. This is a recent one I did. It was like a Kit Kat, like a fruity edition that really let us explore the textures with all these different works here. And yeah, just some different works I can flush through for a second. Had some experiments with rice. Again, we got some nano mesh. We'll actually be doing a little bit of this stuff later in this presentation. This was another series I did. We were taking different global dishes from different national countries. And we got the Pakistani biryani here. And these are foods that you don't normally think of, like when you think of like, you know, big brand stuff. But I was like, I've pretty much done all that stuff already. How can we like push the limits here and make things that don't even look like pure and like perfect? And just kind of mixed all these different textures together. And through that, pretty much all my scenes I light with one of these packs. I've released a few HDRI packs in the past. You can find them at p4d.store. And again, every single one of my renders that you guys might have seen, I'm using one of these things. And so those are, I guess, my handles here. And like I said, all my work at this point is kind of done on Instagram that you've probably seen. So I'll make one reel a day for the most part, where I'll show a little bit of the process and then show like the final outcome. So I'll play a little bit of a reel real quick so you guys can see.
Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Okay, so that's kind of, appreciate that. I'll close that there. So I guess today that'll be a good segue to show, I guess, what we'll be making. So I thought it'd be fun to create from scratch some sort of ramen dish like this, all in ZBrush. And like I said, because we're doing food, and I've been doing that pretty much specifically for the past 3 years, I found really interesting, quick ways to make things that look like it takes a long time. So we're actually, when I say we're going to make this whole bowl of ramen, including the noodles, from really just the geometry of the bowl, that's what we're going to do. And let's kind of get into ZBrush here. It's a different project. Let's go. And I think this, yeah, something like this. So this is kind of what we're going for here. We got the bowl, we have the broth, the noodles, and everything minus pretty much the chopsticks has to do with creating first a Dynamesh sphere, and the same one at that. So I guess let's start here with a sphere. Let me turn on these wireframe here. And so we have a Dynamesh sphere. The guys on Discord, shout out to the Discord, know that I pretty much start with a sphere every single one of my renders. Doesn't matter what we're making. So we're going to start here, and this will be our bowl. So let's go and hold Control-Shift. I'm going to grab a trim curve. We're going to hit like the bottom of this and chop it off. Again, you can see the bottom of the shadow there is what we're chopping off. Boom. And because of that, it creates a polygroup, which is good. And every time you trim something, it's going to create a new polygroup. So we're going to go here and drag right. You can kind of see where the bowl is taking form here. So we have a yellow polygroup, kind of a greenish tint one and a red one. And the good thing about polygroups is you can isolate these now. So you can go Control Shift. Let's go back to our select rect. Control Shift tap here. And then when we're on this mode here, you can see all we have selected is this polygroup, nothing else. We're going to go Control Shift drag to invert that selection, and then delete hidden. You can find this in geometry, modify topology, and delete hidden should be somewhere right. There you go. Thank you. Appreciate it. There it is. Once we have that deleted, you can kind of see this bowl shape here. What we're going to do now, because we have polygroups and this general shape with no inside geometry, we're going to go to Geometry, Z-Remesh, half, Keep Groups, which will tell ZBrush to keep the polygroups there. And that'll be good. Let's remesh this. Looking much cleaner. There we go. Do it a couple more times here, maybe. Looking good. And, you know, ramen bowl, this kind of looks more like a cereal bowl. Let's kind of go for more of a ramen bowl. Easy enough. Let's open up our properties here. Customize this gear. Taper. And you can see you can really change the shape of this bowl like this. So I think something fancy might look like this for the ramen. Okay, that's really wide. Maybe go a little bit down. Like this maybe. And you can change how it bends too. You can say you want to bevel out. And I'm thinking maybe a little bit like something like that. Looks good. So let's hit the gear and go accept. But again, all we have is this like invisible inside. Again, ZBrush treats the topology that's not there as invisible. So we're going to go here and hit one of our favorite tools, Dynamic Subdiv, which will subdivide this mesh as a preview. So it's not actually what's going on. You can't see anything still. But we're going to go take the smoothing all the way down, which means currently it's not doing anything, but it's active. We're going to add a little bit of thickness here, and you can see now that we added that, we have some inner topology and external topology, just like that. So I think we're going to uncheck Post Subdiv, and we're going to click Apply. Now this is just like a flat bowl mesh here. And then we're actually going to activate Dynamic Subdiv again, but instead of adding thickness, we're going to add two levels of smoothing. So you can see, looks like a smooth bowl. I think for the inside, I want it to be a little bit more curved, and the outside be a little bit more harsh. This looks a little bit too easy right there. So we're going to open up our hard surface modeling tools, BZM. You can see Z Modeler. And if I do Shift-D, this will take us out of that preview mode. And again, we're going to add some edge loops here. We're going to go, I think, add one here. If you hover over an edge, you can add this, all these different levels here. You can go Insert, Single Edge Loop. So we're going to add one here, add one right here. And I think for the exterior, let's add one like right here. And now you can see the bottom very sharp. Inside's okay. Before we even apply that though, let's isolate just this polygroup here. On the lowest subdivision, let's mask it by control tapping on the empty space. And then we're going to invert the mask. So now the only thing that you can see right here is this polygroup. Everything else is masked. We're now going to control tap and feather this all out and bring up our deformation tab here. And a lot of times, if I just want to like smooth something out really easy without getting overly complicated, let me just take the contrast and take that down. And you can see it smoothed the whole thing. Very smooth bowl on the inside now, but it keeps the outside very harsh right there. And that's exactly what we're going for. And this is your time to also add those extra like bevels if you wanted to the bowl or something. If you wanted to go to like hover over like one of the faces, Q mesh, poly loop, drag one of these out. You can see, add like a little lip if you wanted, make it fancy. I think for this, we're probably good there. Looks good. Okay, and now we're actually going to solidify this geometry by going to Dynamic Subdiv, hitting Apply. We now have 3 levels of subdivision that we didn't have before. Now it's no longer a preview. It's an actual piece of geometry that you have subdivision levels on. And because we have this bowl here, we can do, you know, maybe make it a little bit taller, maybe a little lower. I think that looks decently good. And so I remember I said earlier we're going to actually make these noodles and broth with the mesh of the bowl. So what do you guys think we should make first, the broth or the noodles? Is that noodles? Is that noodle? Okay, yeah, let's do noodles. Okay. So let's go draw. And first thing we're going to do, our subtool, all we have so far is this bowl. We're going to duplicate the bowl. Control Shift tap on this polygroup. Actually, no, we're going to Control-Shift-Tab on this one. We're going to Control-Shift-S to shrink the selection, just like this. These are actually, believe it or not, this purple thing right here is going to be all the noodles. So with this being said, let's go to our lowest subdivision level, just like that. Delete all the higher topology, and delete hidden. So right now, there's no other piece of that bowl. There's nothing hidden. It's just, this is what it is. And the next thing we're going to do is separate each of these into polygroups, all these lines. So we're going to go BZM again to our hard surface tools. We're going to go polygroup, polyloop. We're going to go here, 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 and there you go. And the way you do that is you can see like it shows you which direction do you want to add the polyloop. So you kind of go a little bit over here to get those. So we have orange and purple. We're looking good. And we're going to go back to, let's go to, actually we're going to stay on our Z modeler tools. We want to get rid of one of these lines. So it's either going to be the orange or the purple. Let's just get rid of the purple. Let's go and hover over one of the purple faces. Let's go delete and polygroup all. It's going to say everything that has this polygroup we're going to get rid of. Just like that. Now you can kind of see almost looking like noodles a little bit, but we got some work to do. Noodles are not perfectly circular and they have an opening. So we're going to delete, we're going to go to our middle thread here and let's go delete single poly. So all like here, maybe here. We're just going to pick random pieces of each of these flat noodles, just like this. Boom. One more, right. Let's go. Here. All right, so now this kind of looks like a maze. You're like, what's going on here? How are these noodles? We're going to use our friend, the dynamic subdiv again, and add some thickness, just like this. Uncheck post subdiv. Looks a little bit weirder, not quite noodles. We'll add one segment here. And we're going to change the offset so they're kind of bulging out a little bit more, just like this. Now these look like really thick noodles here. So we're going to go to our deformation tools again real quick and take the contrast down just a little bit. Starting to look a little bit more noodle-esque. It's going to compromise here with our thickness. Take these down. Yeah, maybe take one of those segments out. This is starting to look kind of like noodles. And once we have this, we're going to go BTA, which will put us in our cloth transpose tool. And now this is the fun part. What we can do, you can just start going dynamics. Let's say allow self-collision. Let's take the firmness down to 3. And you can see when we drag this down, you're like making these noodles out of thin air just like this. So it's like a really organic way to make all these. And sometimes I'll even go drag this, make a few different iterations of these. Unmask. Oops. And do this. And you can see it looks like ramen pretty early in when you start messing inside. And you can have fun with this too, because if we add collision volume, it'll actually interact with the bowl too. So watch, it'll interact with the bowl. It will literally start acting like these real noodles that are falling into the bowl. You can even do a little simulation. It'll drop just like that. And so there's infinite. You can see, like, I didn't have to like hand make each one of these noodles and like have my way with all of them. Let's go over here, just like this. I usually kind of collide them together and bring them back out like this, and then I'm like, okay, that looks kind of cool. You want it to look really organic. I feel like in the food world we call it flawsome, flawed, but like awesome. That's kind of what you're going for, just like this. And once we have, they usually end up having some sort of circle or something in the middle. And the nice thing about this, because this is still in this mode, this is not actually here yet. So if we use something like a BMT or transpose or move topology tool, with this enabled, you can have individual selection over each of these noodles and kind of just drag these wherever you want. Just like this. And it runs really fast because it's really low poly right now. This is not actually here. So I'm just going to bring this stuff over here. And just cover this stuff up. Pretty easy. It doesn't have to be too methodical. Just like this. And again, we still have the same tools we had before. I have this like custom menu I've made before. It's just going back to the deformation tab. Essentially, I've hand placed some of these things like contrast. Can make them bigger, make them smaller, flat noodles. And once we're happy with something like this, And again, this is also where you're going to change whether they're like really squiggly ramen noodles or really fat, like large curves by going into dynamics, firmness. So if this were like really high to something like 5, they're going to be really, like if you're doing something like a pad thai or something, versus something that's really low, like a 2, it's going to be acting more so like ramen or something like that. So we got some noodles there. Let's start making the broth. We're going to actually do the same thing we did before and duplicate the bowl we had. Or actually, I'm sorry, before that, let's make this a real thing. Let's apply this mesh. Now we have 3 subdivision levels, so you can actually go to the lowest and then go to the highest. And now that we're here, you can actually go to the lowest subdivision, and if you wanted them to be really fat noodles, let's inflate. And now you got like these really crazy like soba noodles or something like that. So let's go back, make them a little bit more like ramen. And we have all the flexibility in the world. We can duplicate these. Let's go back to our regular transpose tool. Maybe just rotate these. And you can't even tell I just like rotated. It just looked like a different pair. And maybe if they got a little bit smaller, inflate a little bit, just like this. So we got a bunch of noodles here. We didn't have to use real simulation or anything like that. Very fast. We're going to take this bowl, duplicate it, like I said. We're going to make the broth. So same kind of basic principle that we had last time. We're going to take this one and actually grow the selection until we're happy. Imagine this being the line of the broth. So we're going to keep doing this until we're like, okay, that's probably the level of the broth we want. Here, maybe shrink it. So this is Control-Shift-X or S. And this is only available if you're like selecting something. So let's say, let's maybe start with that. Cool. And once we're happy with that, we're actually going to keep it at the highest subdivision level, delete the lower, because we want this to conform to the bowl as much as we can. So we're actually going to, the next thing, we're going to go to, where is it? I think it's called visibility. Or no, not visibility. It's the polygroups. Just yeah. Well, either way, we're actually gonna go and flip the normals, just like this. So now you can see we're seeing the outside, not the inside. Again, the inside is invisible. And we're going to delete the hidden. So again, that is in geometry. Modified topology, delete hidden. And then when we have all those deleted, we just have this. We're going to close holes. And we have our broth, per se. Once you have the broth, it's easy, just a quick remesh. Let's keep the groups. And again, for something like this, we're going to go to our zero mesher, keep groups, half, and smooth groups 0 because we want to keep the formation of the bowl again, just like this. We just want to fix this topology up here. There we go. And if we had a little bit of like dynamic subdiv, we got something there to work with. And this is where you can also go to like a thick skin clay brush or something. And with dynamic subdiv activated, you can add like some ripples in this stuff or kind of do something that makes it stand out, maybe smooth it a little bit, make it not look too perfect, something like that. And then you can take some of these noodles. Again, we have 2 of these versions now. And if you want them to be a little bit more raised, all you got to really do, let's center this axis, is raise them or lower them. And it looks like the broth is higher or lower. Something like this. And then something else that's nice with ramen is like one of those like those soft-boiled eggs that you throw in those things. So I thought maybe we can whip one of those up. Let's go to a, what do you call it? Insert. Let's go sphere. Go to solo mode here. Eggs, I feel like they're kind of shaped like this. Let's go to the gear, taper. Something like this. I feel like they're not too pointy. Something like this right there. And then we're actually going to accept this. This is a massive egg. We will make this smaller in a second. We're going to go Shift, Control, and trim curve. We're going to trim half of this. Actually, let's do the other half. Something like this. So now we have 2 polygroups again. Again, think soft-boiled egg. We're going to make a runny yolk in the middle. So we're actually going to Control-Shift-Tap here. And then we're going to slice a circle. The slice tool is allowing you to not cut anything off, but just add a polygroup somewhere. So it's slice circle here, just like this. Doesn't have to be too perfect. Another reason I like food is because nothing's like totally perfect. So maybe something like this. Re-enable this. Maybe we can change the color of this one so we don't get confused. And they're going to, let's actually do half keep groups. Something like this. So now we got much better topology. Let's go and add a couple subdivisions, control. Select this area right here. Invert the selection. And something like a inflate balloon. Something like that. And then we're going to have this selection masked. And then we're going to go, let's maybe do a subtool, extract, right here. And now we have just a separate mesh, separate subtool, this middle yoke part. We're going to control here, invert this selection, and inflate balloon. Like here. Doesn't matter if it looks kind of crazy now. It all looks a little bit better in a little bit. Let's inflate it a few times. And we're going to subdivide, or not subdivide, let's go and Z-remesh this by half. Keep doing that a few times. And this is where we have control over some of these like folds you might get from these eggs. There we go. And we get all like B, C, cloth nudge or something like that, and add some like quick little cloth folds or something like this. Something that gives you some kind of organicness in this egg. And these folds actually get affected by this firmness here. So if I drag this all the way up, it gets much more organic. Like maybe like this looks like there's a, you could pop this pretty easily. And sometimes I do just stuff, little things like that to make it look a little bit more organic. Something like that. And a lot of this has to do with later on when you're applying some texture or something like that. Make it a little bit more organic. Maybe take like an H polish brush. Oops. So you got these little deformations happening here. Nothing's perfect. And then to select multiple subtools at once, you can just bring up these tools here. Hit this button that says transpose all selected subtools. Actually, let me unmask that. And when you control shift and go to your selection tool, you just control shift drag. Now everything else you cannot move. I'm going to take this down. Maybe place this somewhere in the ramen bowl. Still a very big egg. Maybe something like this. And again, not to worry because of how we made the noodles. Even if we're running into them and it's looking kind of weird, a little bit sus, just like this. We're going to uncheck that. Of course, we got a noodle wrapping up inside of this egg, but we're just going to select the one here by controlling or alt tapping, going to our lowest subdivision level. Another good reason that we have this, and just move this out of the way. And we're not going to have anything running into this thing anymore. Just like that. And if you have stuff kind of going on here, just give it a quick like inflate maybe. That helps it just a little bit. Maybe smooth this a little bit. And now we can actually, I feel like with these dishes, a lot of times we have like scattered green onions throughout this thing. So similar to Cinema 4D's cloner system, we have this thing called Nanomesh in Zbrush. And I've been using this more and more to scatter things that I want to scatter. So for instance, let me go and grab, trying to think how I want to do this. We could do Nanomesh, or we could actually make a separate insert mesh brush, which is another way of doing it. Let's actually go to a different tool here. Let's grab our cylinder to make a green onion. We're going to go to make Polymesh 3D. Now you can kind of mess with this stuff. What's up, puppy? Okay. And now we're going to separate these things. We only want the ring here, so we're going to go to Group by Normals, which is also in the Polygroups tab. We're going to Control-Shift-Tap here. We're going to delete hidden and add a little bit of dynamic subdiv thickness right here, just like this. And we're going to go BTA, kind of like what we were doing last time, and add a little bit of transpose onto this onion, this green onion here. So we can kind of like mess with this here. Looks kind of cool. Maybe bend it like this. You want it to look pretty organic. Let me go back to maybe firmness of 5. So it kind of pops up. This looks like something you might find in there. They're never perfect. Let me go to my regular transpose, make it a little bit smaller. Something like that. Cool. So now we're going to go and apply this. Go to our second subdivision level, delete higher and lower. This will give us a base. So again, if you wanted to texture these, there are separate texture tags as well if you wanted to put in totally different textures on there. So let's go to something like this angle. Again, when we make an insert mesh brush, the angle that we're looking at is the angle it'll be created from. So let's go B, create insert mesh, new. And then let's go to our ramen bowl here. Yeah, there we go. Is that the right bowl? I think so. Okay. And now that we have all this stuff here, any topology that it senses, you'll be able to drag this stuff out. The only catch is you can't have any subdivision levels on this stuff. So let's go to like right here, something like this, and then go back to this tool, insert mesh. And we can start drawing all of these green onions wherever we want into the scene. A lot of control. Again, each one has like a separate polygroup. Maybe drag one on the over here. And you have a ton of control. This is for if you want to more so hand place. Again, my work that I do, I hardly ever animate. So all this stuff is just going to be like hero shots for packaging and designs like that. So it's fine for me to not even have, like I want like full control of exactly where all these go. And while you're dragging, you can hold down spacebar and move them even further. Just like this. And not to worry, if you still want to move this stuff, you can go BMT. And if I learned this so late in the game, if I go to the smallest draw size, it won't actually mess them up. It'll move them in its entirety without actually deforming them. So it's a great tool to kind of move different elements that are in the same subtool, just like that. There we go. And then let's add some chopsticks or something like that. Throw that in here. I feel like I've made so many of these throughout the years at this point. Typically, we'll go insert cube, very simple. Let's actually group these by normal. So each side has a totally different polygroup. We're going to go to our transpose tool, drag this up, scale down, drag this up, scale down. Let's maybe go over here. And I usually just kind of eyeball it. I feel like that is just totally fine for this purpose. Is that like the general size? I feel like that's like general the size. So again, you want a cleaner topology than this when you're going to be using like dynamic subdiv. So let's go ZRemesher, half, keep groups, detect edges, and smooth groups down to 0. And now you get like these perfectly separated polygroups that are all even. And from here, let's go to the gear, taper, bring this down, something like that. Maybe bring this up a tiny bit. And let's hit the gear icon again, accept. And now when we add, again, I think because we had our, what do you call it? Yeah, because we had our detect edges on, it creates creases around all these polygroups. So we're actually going to want to uncrease all, and then dynamic subdiv. And then flat subdiv will give you a nice even fall off for all of these. So you have very easy fall offs even down to the very top. And because it's in the same subtool and this is still in like a dynamic subdiv mode, let's just place this real quick. Let's like drag the here. And this is where you're really going to see whether it's like the correct size that you made. You drag it down. Let's maybe refinesse this edge here. Control drag to make another one. Just like that. And then once we have both of these, they're all, again, in the same poly group. Let's just drag this axis generally to the center and rotate it so it's not conflicting with the egg as much. Just like that. And once we have these there, you can hit apply, and you have 4 different subdivision levels for these if you wanted to change something like that. And that's kind of how I went about this stuff here, and that's how, you know, we got to this level like this. It's pretty much the same exact bowl I made here. And this, when I was rendering it out, I used just pretty much one, what do you call it, HDRI that I shot, and one massive area light, or one HDRI that I shot, and one massive area light kind of placed in the kind of overhead to the left. And I can show you that here. This was the Cinema 4D file for that. This is essentially just a floating bowl with the same thing we just made. And I have 4 very basic octane textures for this. And again, the lighting real quick, I can show you. I feel like once I hop into Cinema, I'm less comfortable with like one of these guys, so I'm going to go back to my mouse. And you can see, I think we have, yeah, one area light that's kind of giving you sort of a rim light back here. So if I turn this off, let me render this here. Okay, so it was given a decently harsh kind of area light there. And if I turn the HDRI off, we get nothing. And an octane, this is, again, one of my, I wonder if I can show you the HDRI. You can kind of see it over there. This is actually, I went around a ton of different parking garages. Fun fact, if you want something that gives you a very nice HDRI with a lot of contrast, parking garages. You can see like in the middle here, it gets really dark because it's the outside, but then there are usually like a ton of windows or bright areas outside that give you essentially mimicking like studio lighting. And if you don't have something like a chrome ball, it doesn't really matter. So we're just gonna bump up this exposure here. I think I had it at like 60 or something. Just like that. And then we're gonna turn on this octane light. And you can see, I'm gonna start dragging on these textures, which when I say simple, very, very simple. So again, it just goes to show how important the lighting actually is for these. I think a lot of people have this misconception that it's all in the texturing, and it's really, you can see just with a basic kind of texture slapped on here, I'm gonna just do that to all of these. I think these were like black chopsticks at the time. Boom. I got the broth here. Oh wait, that's the bowl. Let's get the broth here. Hopefully I can select this right. There we go. Some of the noodles. There we go. And I think the green onions, where are those? Boom. Oh, it looks like one of these are not being detected. I guess we can just take this out. Oh wait. Yeah, let's take this out. There we go. But you can see a lot of subsurface scattering. At least for these green onions, this was the structure. This is really the only thing in this render that had anything to do with a anything more than just like a basic like material there. So a couple multiply nodes. We don't even need this one. We got your base color here, and then a dirt node is similar to like an occlusion node in other programs, where it can, anything that it's running against or really sharp edges, you can change those colors. I think I just have like a darker green for these. But you can see, if I go to like this closer up angle, most of it is either in the lighting or, you know, the Octane camera settings. And recently Octane's added this really cool chromatic aberration stuff where you can just go to the lens effects, some cool chromatic aberration. But that's pretty much it. That is the to the extent of that. I also brought a couple other like project files, especially in Zbrush, that I want to kind of go over. One of my recent posts was actually, let me see, let me go to this. Yeah, there we go. This was a steak tartare that I made very recently. Again, all kind of sculpted in Zbrush. We had some bread there. And a lot of this detail was sculpted in there. And this was, typically for these renders, this was about like hour and a half, 2 hours. And you can see if I go to this. I think I have this project file open. This was kind of what this looked like. Again, I make these in Discord every single morning, pretty much. And you can see this one was a fun one. I wanted to kind of go over this, how to go over this. This is essentially started into a nanomesh, projecting these all onto these like cylindrical pieces, a very simple cylindrical piece. And then I like baked them down, dynameshed. And when you do that, you get all these different polygroups here. So you can like select, you can see if I solve this out, they're all just different polygroups. And the thing with different polygroups, especially in a situation like this, you can go and mask by feature. And you can see right here, it's masking by all of these different polygroups. So that when you grow this mask, you can like inflate, you can take stuff out, you can make this stuff, you know, really gooey, or you can just like take the contrast all the way down like this, but it doesn't affect the initial piece of that mesh. So you get this like really organic thing every single time. And so all that was like a nano mesh, and just bake that all down just like that. We kind of made a yolk before, so you guys kind of get that. And something like this, it was a mask that I extruded that once you're in this phase, something I like a lot is like a BTS, which is a thick skin clay brush. So if I go to transpose cloth, it can give you really nice, like, kind of like organic, here, let me delete these subdivisions. It's a very organic kind of switch to this mesh. And that's how I make a lot of like mashed potatoes or different things with like chocolate. And then we can like smooth this stuff out and kind of get like a heavy middle ground there. But essentially, I think that's for the most part it. I brought like a couple different ones. This is a recent dish I made before. This is a fun one. It was like a scallop fancy dish with like a fancy orange garnish on there with another ZBrush garnish made of some sort of like fried material. Sometimes I like to incorporate these logos in there. And I guess the only main crazy thing I did here was like in nanomesh, the thing I love the most is that when you're projecting all these spheres on there, this actually is physical geometry, but if I go and switch this to right here, this is the nanomesh version. And the thing I love about nanomesh is because it's projecting onto this surface, you can see right there. Let's make the surface invisible, and whenever I drag this surface out, you would think that it's going to distort all these spheres, but it actually just places them and replaces them on that surface. So I can move this stuff. It's always going to look organic without like messing up where the spheres are actually kind of placed. So you can see it follows the geometry. We have a bunch of these randomized, so we can random the seed here. And then once you bake them down, you have all that extra control. Let's bake this down by going inventory, 1 to mesh. And you can see this is what we got now. So if we solo this, Control-Shift-Tap on the green, let's invert that and delete hidden. And now when you do something like a auto groups in the polygroup tab, it gives you different colors for all these. So you can isolate them if you wanted to get rid of a couple. Or like we had before with the smallest draw size, you can move them one by one now without distorting them. Versus before we were moving all of them kind of at once, just like that. So I'm kind of using all these different types of tools every single day for different dishes that I make pretty much every morning. And this leads to a lot of client work in the food and beverage industry. And like I said before, I've never actually pitched to a client in the food space. It's because of the stuff like Instagram and me being so consistent, making reels every day. You know, typical client projects start off with like I got like an email from a agency, and they're like, "Hey, we've been following your work for a while. I'm a creative director. We got this project from Pop-Tarts. Think you'd be great for it. Let's go." And so that's kind of my pitch of the world, like making different reels every single day instead of having to like one by one reach out to different clients like that. And I think that was pretty much for the most part it. That is just how I do this stuff, the food stuff every day.
Awesome. Let's give Patrick a big round of applause here.
Appreciate it.
All right. Nice. All right. So good news is we do have a couple minutes. If you do have questions for Patrick, now would be a great time. He's here. He has his files open. He's in front of his screen. There he is. Louis, what you got?
That's the caviar?
Yeah, you want to... The circle select?
Oh, okay.
So yeah, how did you change it to a more oblong shape with the?
Oh, like the egg? That
the selection.
the selection.
Itself. Do you remember what you did?
The circle select.
So you made a mask that was a circle, and then you elongated it. Elongated the selection. Do you remember doing that? He doesn't remember doing that.
I kind of just blacked out. Let me.
He's just
in this one right here. First one. This one? Oh, for the egg. Oh, are you talking about when I was here and I did like a slice circle and I went like this? Yeah. I think it's all
modifier key.
No, it's literally just Control Shift, and you can just go like this. And if you wanted it to remain consistent, I think you can also go here and go square, and it'll keep the same. So it's in the tools here. So if you take that off, you can have full range right here. I think that's what you're talking. And if you hold down spacebar while you're doing this, which I learned again late in the game, you can move this around and have all that flexibility as well.
So you did remember.
No, I didn't.
You
yeah,
didn't.
no.
You just
didn't.
figured it out.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
I just learned that.
Yeah, you just learned something new. All right. Any more questions for Patrick? Jen, what you got?
You're making the green onions. They're pretty cut straight. I wanted to cut them on the lines, like scoot those lines to cut them to
Yeah, for sure. That was a great question.
Onions cut a different way. How
Yes.
can you help her make those chives a little bit different, right?
Good word choice, chives. I like that word choice. That was good. Make Polymesh 3D again. I would separate these by the normals again. Get this out of the way. Delete hidden, and then all I would actually do. Let's go slice curve, and then when we drag this out and let go of Shift, we can drag this here. Boom, like this. Oops. And now we can just select this part. Delete hidden again. Elongate these. Geometry. Zero mesh, half, keep groups down to 0. And then we add some thickness without the post subdiv. And when you add some of this stuff, you can really finesse it out by like throwing it into the ground. Is that kind of what you're going for? Just like that? Yeah.
She's happy with the chives. All
yeah,
right.
that'll be $50. Oh.
New cut. New cut.
Yeah.
All right. Any more questions for Patrick? Good news is, if you're feeling a little shy but you get hungry later, he'll be back there at our Dell partner station for the next hour, so you can ask him any questions that you have there. So please stay tuned, folks. We're going to be right back after the next break with our next presenter, which will be Josh, who actually won the Beeple Death Match. So
that's
stay
crazy.
tuned.
Where is he? Right there, that guy.
Yeah, he's
red
there.
sweatshirt.
He's there, folks. All right.
That's the
We'll
guy
see you
right
right after the break, Internet.